Ever since that Nintendo Direct last week that revealed more information about the Switch 2, I've had some questions as to whether or not the current Switch would be able to be used in the new dock. Well, it looks like we may have the answer to that thanks to a patent that was just revealed today. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now when we first saw the Switch 2 in the new dock, it was pretty obvious to me that the Switch 2 would not work in the old dock, especially considering that the Switch 2 supports 4K, VRR, and 120 Hz. And in case you were wondering, there is an official list of compatible accessories for the Switch 2, and it does show that the old dock is not compatible. However, this doesn't really tell us anything as to whether or not you'd be able to take your current Switch and put it in the Switch 2 dock. It seems to me like if the Switch 2 dock supports all these higher specifications, that original Switches would still be able to be used in this new dock. Now you may be asking yourself, why would you want to do that? Well, let's say you have a household where you might have some old Switches lying around that, say, a family member or a kid or something might have that they want to be able to use. It would be nice to have just one dock connected to your TV, and then you could be able to use it for either Switch. And I've not seen Nintendo make a comment either way. I even went to their official store page here for the Switch 2 dock, and you can see here it doesn't have any information about compatibility with the current gen Switch. Well, today I saw this patent get published in Japan from Nintendo, and it's basically all about the Switch 2 dock. Now it goes into like exploded diagrams of how it's all assembled together, and that's not what I'm going to concentrate on here. Now another thing I'll mention is that these are block diagrams. They're not going to be an actual representation of exactly what the dock and the Switch 2 look like. So everything's going to have these square edges. It's just designed to sort of give you an idea of the functionality. So we'll start here first with this diagram that gives you an idea of what the Switch 2 would look like when it goes into the Switch 2 dock. And you can see those square pegs at the bottom are lining up in order to allow the system to fully seat into the dock. Now let's compare that to this diagram here that shows what would happen if a current Switch goes into a Switch 2 dock. Now remember, Nintendo did say that both the Switch and the Switch 2 are the same thickness, so the opening in the docks would be the same, but you can see at the bottom here they've got those square pegs that are moved over a little different so that the current Switch would not be able to seat fully into the Switch 2 dock. Now in the previous diagram, the Switch 2 is noted as device 3, and you can see in this diagram the current Switch is noted as device 13, and that's important in the description here. Now bear with me, this is using Google Translate, and it is a technical description, so it can be a little rough to follow. But we'll just start with the first line in the first paragraph here. It says, in the proper state, the electronic device 3, which is referring to the Switch 2, can be inserted into the cradle, which is device 2, and the cradle 2 can support the electronic device 3. And I'm going to skip down to the second paragraph here, and this is the situation of putting a current Switch into the new dock. It says, 11 is a schematic side view for explaining the insertion of an electronic device into the cradle. An electronic device 13, which is going to be the old Switch, having a different configuration from electronic device 3, which is the Switch 2, is about to be inserted into cradle 2. And now that we've read that description, I just want to pull the diagram back up here that shows what happens when you try to put a Switch into a Switch 2 dock. And again, you can see that it's not going to align and be able to fully seat. Now, I will add a caveat. There's nothing here in this patent that designates things as being like current Switch or Switch 2. And this all could just be a design that they came up with and then eventually abandoned. So I can't say that this is a 100% guarantee that the current Switch won't work in the Switch 2 dock. However, if you take this zoomed in picture of the Switch 2 from that original first look trailer, you can see the width of that notch below the USB-C port is a little bit wider than the USB-C port itself. And it also looks like those two peg holes that are to the side of the USB-C port might be a little bit bigger than the height of the USB-C port. Now let's contrast that with the current Switch, and I'm not looking at the OLED just yet. We'll look at the original Switch, and you can see that notch below the USB-C port is basically the same width as the USB-C port. So to me, this says that the new dock has a larger notch at the bottom of it that will not allow the original switch to insert into it. Now the two peg holes that are off to the side seem to be kind of close to the same size, but it looks to me like they're further away from the USB-C port than they were on the bottom of the Switch 2. Feel free to rewind the video here and compare the different frames of these and see if you agree with what I am seeing. So after seeing this patent come out today and taking a closer look at the ports on the current Switch as well as what we've seen on the Switch 2, I'm pretty sure that your current Switch will not be able to work in the new dock. Now I do have to wonder why Nintendo would go this route. I mean, the two systems are the same thickness. It seems like you could easily make the new dock compatible with the older systems. The new dock's going to supply more power, so there's not a power issue there. The old Switch only outputs 1080p, so we don't have to worry about that. The new dock supports 4K. So I'm not sure what the reasoning would be. I have seen some speculation that some of the upscaling could be done inside of the dock, and that's the reason why it also has a fan in it. However, it seems like that would add more latency to the video, and I'm not sure how well upscaling would happen within the dock. Many of these upscaling techniques like DLSS work kind of between the different stages of creating the video, so it really doesn't add a whole lot of latency to the processing. So the only other thing that I can think of as to why Nintendo would make the new dock not compatible with the old Switch or even the Switch OLED, because the Switch OLED does have those same notches, and that's because maybe the current Switch and the Switch OLED isn't compatible with the built-in Ethernet port on the Switch 2 dock. Unfortunately, the technical specifications for the new dock just say that it has a LAN port and doesn't expand anymore, like whether it's a gigabit port or who knows, maybe 10 gig. So if all this is true and you can't put a current Switch into the Switch 2 dock, it seems like Nintendo may have missed an opportunity here. Being able to have just one dock connected to your TV that could support both the Switch and the Switch 2 would be a big advantage, especially in a household that has maybe several kids and each of them have their own Switch. And say Junior's not going to get that Switch 2 this year because the price is just too high, so he'll just have to deal with the current Switch for now. Now the last thing that I did think of as I was preparing the thumbnail for this video is the fact that the Switch 2 is so much bigger than the current Switch that maybe if you tried to put a current Switch into a Switch 2 dock, it wouldn't fit along the side where the Joy-Cons are attached. So that would mean you would have to disconnect the Joy-Cons in order to get the Switch into the Switch 2 dock, and then how would you get it out? There wouldn't really be anything to easily grab. So to me, this seems the most plausible reason as to why Nintendo would make the Switch 2 dock not compatible physically with the current Switch. Now I do have to wonder what will happen if you just hook up a USB-C extension cable and run it out of the dock and plug it directly into the current Switch. That's probably something I'll try whenever I get my Switch 2. But let me know what you think about all this. Does this sound all reasonable to you that most likely you're not going to be able to use the current Switch in the Switch 2 dock? Or is there some information out there that maybe I missed that could lead us to believe the other way? Drop your comments below and let me know your thoughts. And if you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing so. It really does help the channel out quite a bit. I want to thank you for watching and be good.